Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Srinivas Kunte, Director for Professional Learning and Advocacy at CFA Institute. I'm an unexpected, not a moderator exactly, but I'm here to introduce Amit, two very distinguished guests who are going to speak on a very special topic. And the topic is CEO's Insights, Board Diversity, Does It Matter? Diversity is, as almost all of you may know, that it's extremely important for both CFA Society India board as well as the CFA Institute. We try to promote diversity in any which ways we find the opportunities. For example, be it speaking opportunities or be it writing opportunities, and not just because that to fill a quota or something, but we really believe that the world is lacking today in terms of diversity. It's been a boys club, especially in India, and they say that 2019 was the year of change, and we'll hear a bit about that in the presentation. But let me quickly introduce the speakers. We've got really very distinguished speakers today. Zarin Daruwala, she's the Chief Executive Officer of Standard Chartered Bank. She's had a career spanning almost 3 decades, and she's been in almost every other field in financial services. Zareen has been among the top most powerful women as rated by several domestic and international publications. Zareen has been a rank holder in Chartered Accountant, and she's won the President's Gold Medal in the company secretary exams. Special privilege to have you with us, Zareen. Welcome. And we have Amit Tandon. He is the founder and managing director of IIS. Amit also is a very well-known figure. Amit used to be the managing director and CEO of Fitch Ratings. He has been a member of several regulatory committees. These are government committees, especially SEBI. Amit has studied economics at the famous St. Stephen's College in Delhi, and he holds an MBA as well as a MPhil in economics. Just a couple of, before that, IIS, Amit's company, they have produced two reports, or they have worked on two reports so far on women. The first report was produced in 2017. The second report was produced in May 2020, this year. And Amit is going to talk a bit on his findings, but it's not just about the findings from the report. They are going to really go in depth into this question of diversity. A couple of housekeeping instructions. For those who have been attending these webinars, they may know very well, but try to put the questions in the Q&A box. And then there will be a survey as well towards the end. Please give us feedback and also send us mails on what you would like to see, what we could improve on, and so on and so forth. Next week, there will be another webinar, and that will be on REITs. It will be on Wednesday, same time, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Thank you very much for logging in on a Friday evening. And I hand over the proceedings to Amit and Zarin. Amit, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Just wanted to know, have you got hold of, are you able to see my presentation?
Not yet, Amit.
Okay, I need to take another shot at it. Okay, better luck this time?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank first the CFA Institute and Srinivas for giving me this opportunity to come and talk about a subject which remains fairly close to me. It's something which we at IIS have been focusing on pretty much from the day we set up shop, which is way back in 2010-11. I also welcome this opportunity to have a dialogue with Zarin. Zarin and I have been colleagues or were colleagues way back in the late 80s. Unfortunately, it dates both of us in terms of when we began our career, but it's a long association. And I've always valued this association. So it's kind of a reason to feel doubly happy. The CFA Institute as well as chatting with Zarin. So what I'm going to do is, walk you through a couple of slides. Srinivas also spoke about the fact that we've done some studies on it. So just in the course of it, what we find out, what we found, what the data is showing, and also use that not so much as to analyze the data which we found, but use that as the basis on which to discuss some of the broader trends and themes. And to my mind, what is important for the markets. So this is a fairly old saying which is there: women hold up half the sky, which is there from Mao Zedong. But for whatever reason it is, it's the men who believe that it's their sex which has been burdened with running off the corporate enterprises. And you kind of start to see that in the data. Now, more recently, and this is after the pandemic hit, there is talk of, if you look at the companies which have been more successful in dealing with the pandemic, be it New Zealand, be it Taiwan, be it Finland, be it Germany, be it Iceland. One of the thread which runs through all these companies is countries is the fact that they're governed or their leaders are all women. So maybe at one level, women are quite happy running countries and leaving running businesses to men. But having said so, that's more tongue-in-cheek rather than serious. But women are pretty much 50% of the population, as said, and therefore it's difficult to understand why they're accounting for so little of what is happening in corporate India. When I was kind of preparing for this webinar, last week there was this data which kind of came out from it was in Mint, and I found this very interesting because we kind of do say that there are these different gender roles. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. But what this slide is actually showing us is that career aspirations of men and women, and no surprises that, when you talk to them, and it's a fairly large survey size, it's about 5,400 men and about 4,500 women. Which career they'd like to have, you're kind of seeing that these are pretty much aligned. So if 20% of the men wanted to be running their own business or an independent consultancy, it was also a similar number of women who were doing so. If there were 13% of the men who wanted to work in government services, it was 12% women. But if it was, 8% women who wanted to be in healthcare, it was 3% men. But the fact is that there's a great deal of similarity in the two sets of data. It would be wonderful to look at what it was, 25 years ago. And maybe, while I did have a couple of slides, maybe it's a good opportunity to bring Zarin in because, when I think about it, when I go back to my growing up years or initial years, there were a handful of women chartered accountants, but there were few and far in between. So Zarin, just looking at this data, which is there for today, and just going back in time when you were a student, just walk us through in terms of why did you decide to do chartered accountancy, which was clearly male dominated at that stage or at that time. And just walk us through some of your experiences. Was it easy? Was it difficult? When you were kind of going into companies, offices, were the hygiene factors even geared up to accommodate, have women auditing their books? And how did people deal with it? So from your decision to become a chartered accountant to how people were interacting with you and dealing with you as a woman or as a girl, and a young girl too at that.
Yeah, so Amit, actually I landed up in those days, I think you didn't have so many career options like you have today. So for me, it was more the process of elimination. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor because I couldn't stand the sight of blood. And engineering was very male dominated. So I opted for commerce, and in commerce you had two options, CA or MBA in those days. And that's how I landed up doing chartered accountancy actually by default, through the process of, the options were quite narrow in those days. Having said that, when I was going for audit, etc., I really didn't feel that I had a problem in those days, because I did my articleship in SB Billimoria. Those days, Mr. Maligam used to be the senior most partner there. And we were sent, they never sent me outside Bombay for audit. They were quite considerate. And I landed up doing audit in places, while I did land up going to factory locations, etc., but that was limited to Thane or whatever, in good companies like Voltas. So I really didn't find any such hurdles, if I was to use the word. And we did have a few women, even those days, doing articleship along with me. So I didn't feel out of place at all.
Sure. Thanks. This is, I will come back and ask this question in terms of, maybe at the end of it, we could discuss this and flesh it out a little bit more. But to move on, just in terms of, I'm going to walk you through a few slides. So first is, what is the data telling us? The other is, so share some data with you. The second is, I'm going to ask the question that are we misreading the data? Explain data in terms of some of the theories we have, touch about why does it matter, and finally, maybe have a discussion with Zarin on the way forward in terms of what is there. The context of this is, we had this report which we had presented in May, which is on corporate India, women on boards. As we said, we'd done some work on this in 2017. What we did this time was updated our study. And, one of the things which is there, and I'll quote from the foreword, and it's a foreword which was written by Navneet Munot, who I believe is fairly active with the association. And he said, look, why it's relevant today is the fact that, if you're looking at the board, what is equally important is that when women reach this stage, the corner, many more will be wanting to, they will serve as a role model for others who are kind of entering the workforce today or are looking at career options today. So, even if the data which we see is not what we'd like to see, it's important for us to kind of focus on this aspect if we were to look at the long term. And again, this is a theme I'm going to come to time and again. So Zarin, before I go back to the presentation, let me kind of just drag you in for one more question. Today, there are many role models such as yourselves. There are a bunch of your former colleagues, be it Kalpana, be it Shikha, Sharma, be it Renuka Ramnath. You've also got women industrialists, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw. We've got Meher Padamji. We've got, the Reddy sisters in Apollo. We've got Misaba Godrej, etc. So when you were growing up, what was it you, I know you did say that you kind of just landed in the profession more by process of elimination. But who were your role models then? Who would you look up to and say that, look, this is someone I want to emulate, or this is what I want my career path to look like?
So, of course, for me, my role models were male and female. So I will focus on both, I think. So when I joined ICICI, actually, again, it was, when I got my rank as a chartered accountant, I went to Mr. Maligam to understand, what are the kind of organizations where I should look at. And being a chartered accountant rank holder, you do get offers from companies, unsolicited offers. So he actually advised me that look at ICICI, it's a great place for women. And I got through ICICI interview, and my first boss was Lalita Gupte. I think Amit, you would also know her. So she was a deputy general manager when I joined. And she was somebody who was very motherly in the way she treated all of us. But a lot of things that I learned from her. One thing that I really learned from her was an eye for error. I remember I would type out those days we would type out our own letters, and she would find that one error in that letter. And many things that I learned, if we were working late, she would be very concerned. She would ensure that we reach home safely. There was a time when she even would send food from home if we were working late. So a lot of little things that little care that I saw when she was the boss. At the same time, she was very tasky, very demanding in terms of what we have to deliver. But she had that little caring attitude also. So those were traits that I picked up from her. Of course, Mr. Vagul was the chairman. And clearly, one of the things that really stayed with me about Mr. Vagul was his humility. And clearly, again, a brilliant person who one looked up to. And Mr. Vagul had that ability to talk, even if you're a 2-year-old in the organization, you could access Mr. Vagul. And that was something that really stayed with me. And of course, then Mr. Kamath came, and Mr. Kamath again was a visionary. So one learned a lot from Mr. Kamath about having a big picture in mind and being very strategic in your thinking. So there have been a lot of, for me, I've been very lucky to have such stalwarts with whom I've worked.
They're all very big names. Mr. Kamath, Mr. Vagol, Lalita herself. She was a pathbreaker in more ways than one, and has been and continues to inspire a lot of people even today. Quickly, let's move on. One of the, this is a fairly interesting slide from the study which we put out, which is, it captures the number of women directors, and this is data for the Nifty 500 companies. It's for 30th March 2020 and for 31st March in 2017. But one of the things we find, and this actually goes back a little bit in time, and if you kind of look at 31st March 2014, before that there were about 6% of the women of boards were, board composition were women directors. Thereafter, the number as a consequence of the legislation or the regulations actually jumped up. And what is kind of interesting is that if you go back even 2011, 12, 13, the number was stuck in a groove of about 5 to 6%. It kind of jumped up to about 12 to 14% thereafter, after the new Companies Act kicked in, which asked for each board to have a woman director. And then when the quota committee kicked in and asked for the woman director to be independent, the numbers kind of jumped up to 17. So I think what the message which I take back from this slide is that regulations do play a very important role and have played a very important role in this whole debate which we are having today on gender. And the next slide actually talks about the fact this is not just so in India. This is a study which was released earlier this week at a FICCI seminar, and it gives the experience of different companies. Therein, the screen can be split into two. The purple is where there is a mandatory requirement. The greenish hue, the orange hue is where there are disclosures but no mandatory requirement, and where there is blue is where there is no mandate. So again, one of the two things stand out. One is across the board, there has been some improvement as far as gender or women on boards is concerned. But the second thing which is more noticeable is the fact that where it is mandated, you've kind of seen greater progress than where it is not mandated. So this is one of the lessons which at least we've taken to heart when we think about bringing about changes in corporate behavior. I'm not going to I'm going to just quickly flash through some of these screens on the next few pages. I'm not going to focus on them. But basically what we are saying in these few slides is the fact that, the number of women directors, whichever way you measure it, is kind of moving up. And there are different ways of slicing and splicing this data. Having one woman director out of five directors is one thing, but having one woman director when you've got a board size of 15 is something else. So we've kind of looked at all of this, and hopefully you all will kind of take the trouble to look at the study and go through it in detail.
Question on the earlier slide. It says that women are there on more than 3 boards. There are very few women. So why, if regulation is allowing, why do you think women are not opting to be on more boards than one?
I think, Zarin, my experience is that it's a bigger challenge for a woman to get onto a board than for a man to get onto a board. And when we've spoken to a lot of the women directors, the process they kind of say for just becoming a director, and it's true for the first, but unless you're a marquee name, it becomes very difficult. What they say is that they go through an interview process where first they meet someone from the HR. Then they meet, if it's a promoter-run company, then they meet the promoter. Otherwise, they then will meet the CEO and then 2 or 3 members of the board. So it's a 6 to 8 month process, which is there for women before they are able to kind of get onto the first board. After that, it takes about 6 months to a year to get on to the second board. There are those who are more, there is also this, stereotyping in terms of, women don't network enough to get onto another board. And that is something which we can talk about. But the short answer to your question is that it's the initial getting onto the first board, which is a really big challenge. As against men who kind of, you've just said, okay, you've retired from the government, you may not be on a board, but fine. Let's kind of move you and get you working and take you on to a board of directors. There's also this issue in terms, and I'm going to address it on one of the later slides, which is the composition of the remuneration committee. So far, it has been dominated by men. We are now seeing women come onto the nomination and remuneration committee. So if you're only, if it's male dominated, you're more likely to think of other men. As women get onto the remuneration committee, and there was, talk of having it mandatory to have at least the woman director as a member of the nomination committee. And maybe that is something where, when you kind of think about who you think might fit into the board, who might play a role, a productive role in the company and a strategic role in the company as a board member. Women are more likely to think about other women as well, women and men. Men are more likely, their first choice is to think about men itself. So, and that plus if you have women as chairman of companies, and that data again I'll share with you. So it's a combination of things, which means that you have women who are there in fewer boards, or there are fewer companies with 3 or more persons on the board. But again, the good news, if I may say, is that if you kind of compare it to what it was 3 years ago when we looked at the data, the numbers are kind of pointing in the right direction.
Sorry, Amit and Zarin, related question, and there have been 3 questions, 2 anonymous, one from Amit Chakravarti. So Amit asks, what can be done to ensure women, who start their careers to remain in the financial services industry? How do they go to the board level if they are,
Let's come back to it, I think.
And the second question, if I may, do you think it will become easier for women to get into onto the first board over time? Because you mentioned it's difficult, but over time, will it become easier?
Let's kind of keep both these questions to the end and come back to some of these specifics. Otherwise, maybe, some of them will get addressed in the course of it. Some of it we
Okay,
might have
okay.
to come back to specifically. The other bit which I think the data which stands out on this slide is that the fact that, the PSUs trail behind as far as women representation on the board is concerned. And it's by a mile. It's not that there's just a small gap between. So all the others are kind of bunched around the 18, 19%. But PSUs kind of lag behind, given the thrust which the government has had on women and the girl child. It's a kind of surprising outcome which we are seeing there. The other is, of course, when you see the sectoral composition, on the manufacturing, you kind of see fewer women on the board. You see many more of them in the services sector. Of course, reality is actually one of the things which surprised us. But other than that, it kind of fits in. We thought reality was a little bit on higher than what we expected to find, and financials was lower than what you expected to find. But nonetheless, very clearly, there is scope for these numbers to go up across the board. I kind of jump this slide. Other than one of the myths which is there in the market is the fact that we always believe that it's the mothers and the daughters and the sisters who are on boards of companies when companies were asked to bring in have gender diversity on the board. Most of the directors, women directors who've got appointed are professional directors. So that's good news for the question which was asked. Most of them are professionals. In fact, the FICCI study points out to the fact that most of the women who are there are better qualified than their male counterparts on boards. There are a handful of women directors, and even when you kind of who are there from the families, but even when you look at that, a large number of them are executive directors. So it's that fact that they are doing something in the businesses rather than just being brought in there for ticking the box. So that's one of the myths which is important for us to bear in mind. This is the slide which I spoke to, and this is the question you'd asked, Zarin. We believe, or at least I believe, that just now the number of chairmen, only 2% or 9 companies have women as chairpersons. As this number goes up, I believe we are going to see more women participating on the boards. On the committees, we go back 3 years, it was about 13%. Now the number is now much larger. It's about 18%. So as these numbers go up, I think you're going to kind of see more women participating on boards. This is a little bit more data on tenure and age, but I come back, and this is a question which I started with. Are we misreading the data? So what we are seeing today is the fact that the persons are on the board are those who were in middle management about 10 years ago, which is a consequence of those who were joining the businesses or companies about 15 or 20 or 25 years ago or 30 years ago. So the question to ask is that, look, did we see a completely different input level 30, 35 years ago, so that, those who, if we had an equal number of men and women joining, then we should have expected an equal number of women to be on the board. But if you had a significantly lower number of women which were or who were joining the board, joining the organization or the company, you should expect to see these outcomes. So therefore, there are 2 questions or 2 theories which are there. Both of them are relatively old. Both of them have been beaten to death. But let me kind of just say that. One is the fact that, if you kind of look at women, they kind of tend to be, and this is not something which I've kind of made up, but there's enough research at Harvard, and there are a lot of blogs which have been written on this subject, is the fact that women are more modest, or if there's an opportunity for volunteering to do something in the company, women are less likely to raise their hands on the issue. The other is the fact that, they're also the fact that, they kind of balance things between home and work pretty well. So if there's a choice of, doing work within the city, they'd rather do it rather than want to travel out, do 70 hours a week, because they're able to juggle what is happening at home and what is happening at work. Maybe it's an old theory, maybe it's the fact that, and again, I'm going to revisit this as we go along, and partly it's linked to gender stereotypes. So you do believe that, there's certain jobs which men are doing, men are better at versus women. And, it kind of reflects when we look at the data for boards. Initially, all the women tended to be on the CSR committees. Now, when they've been on boards for a while, they've kind of started to contribute to what is happening. You're seeing them coming on to different committees. So that again is something which is going to happen over a period of time. I also believe with some of the myths, some of the other things, factors which are there, which is, this whole thing of spending huge hours of time in office. So, the moment you say that, look, you are going to have 70, 80, 90-hour day work weeks, it is going to be, it's just the nature of things, the nature of society, where we are. It kind of means that men are going to be preferred to women. And one of the things we can talk about is that, will work from home and what is the effect that will have on some of these factors. What I have here is, we kind of, I'd spoken to some of the people who are on boards and, just asking that question that, women directors are now on boards. What has changed? Is it good? Is it bad? And some of the feedback is, and what's I popped up is, they bring valuable insights. They tend to be very thorough, well prepared, insightful, and prudent in taking risks. Improve the team spirit and orderliness of the board, enable the board to function a little bit more effectively. The fact that they've broken the perceived glass ceiling encourages women executives to aspire for higher progression in the company as they go along. They also kind of ensure that, the work environment is such that companies provide a safe and comfortable workplace and opportunity for women to employees. And maybe, Zarin, we could touch upon this aspect in terms of what companies are doing in the panel in our when we are going to be talking about it. So this brings me the question that, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. But the second best is now. So we have to see what is it that we can do today to ensure that we have a sufficient pipeline of women who are available in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, at all across the spectrum of time going forward, to come on boards. Now, clearly, waiting for 20 years is too long a period of time. So can we do something which is quick term fixes? We've seen women on boards, mandatory provisions, it's helped. The US has the voluntary club, the 30% club, which means 30% of the boards need to be women directors. Maybe we could have a target for ourselves. We did toy around with saying 20% by 2020. But given the fact that we are at 18% now, we could also have a target of, 30% by in the next 3 years. Something which we can advocate, work with the companies, work with women directors. The other is, of course, what McKinsey's identified some things, which is, there has to be a change in mindset, which is a visible commitment to diversity across the company, across the hierarchy, include women in all slates. And it's quite interesting. Bloomberg had done an event a few months ago, and when I was talking to some of their leadership team, and one of the things they said is that if Bloomberg, there's a show, they make a endeavor to ensure that, look, at least one of the panelists on the show is a woman. If they are writing an article, they will try and bring in at least one woman who gets quoted in the story. It's a fairly small step, but something which has to be done. When boards are selecting the CEOs, or when companies are looking at filling in the gaps, that is again a time to say that, look, can we specifically focus on, if there's a committee, I'm not saying don't choose the best person, but at least try and see that there are a few women candidates whose names have been put forward. And finally, of course, there's this, the change to the workforce, be it, having creches, or be it a better, more friendly atmosphere. Which brings me to the other fact. Maybe we don't have to make about so many changes to the workplace. Maybe since the workplace has come to home. And this is lovely. It's just a collection of, just 3 photographs which I Googled yesterday on work from home. And, it's both the genders. It's not just that the women are looking after the children, it's the men who also are doing so. Both of them are working from home. Everyone's sharing responsibilities. So maybe one of the big impact which the pandemic will bring about is that some of the gender roles will get redefined, and they will not be as delineated as they are today. So I'm going to kind of stop short here. I'm going to open it up for, take back my screen, open it up for a Q&A session. But before I do that, let me kind of move on to you, Zarin, and a series of, questions coming back to you. The first is, of course, we saw this difference in gender roles, how many women are there in, first is by ownership, and the second was in terms of looking at it in terms of, in terms of the industry. So have you, as the CEO, or when you were kind of dealing with companies, have you experienced some such gender specific issues with companies, and by ownership or by kind of industry?
So Amit, actually my own experience has been that women do far better in the services sector, and the natural preference of women is to be in IT or financial services or the hospitality sector, etc., because rather than being on the shop floor. So you see that kind of trend, and you also see in those kinds of sectors, you actually see a lot of women even at senior levels. So if you look at the IT sector, we've had the head of IBM, the head of Accenture, we've had the head of Capgemini in India being women. Even HP, Hewlett Packard, Neelam Dhawan was the CEO. So one is seeing that kind of pattern depending on the industry. And clearly in the IT sector or the financial services sector, there's been much more gender diversity. If an employer is trying to recruit somebody who's in hardcore manufacturing, it's not easy for the woman also to sort of excel, because there is a bit of skepticism, if I was to use the word, when the woman enters the shop floor. So women themselves kind of try and choose industries where they think it's much more easier for them to function and grow and excel.
Okay. So, again, one of the things which surprises me, it stands out in the data, but, when we kind of looked at the Nifty 100 companies, is the fact that, a lot of them talk about the fact that they're equal opportunity employers. They all kind of articulate the fact that there is a need for gender parity. But otherwise, when you kind of sift through the data, if you look at the Nifty 100 companies, only 8 companies, and most of them are IT companies, have women comprising more than 30% of the work. Sorry, 5 of the 8 are in the IT sector. One of the, I can understand in the manufacturing sector on the shop floor, you've got 3 shifts, so, women kind of get ruled out, etc. But one of the things which has surprised me is the fact that in the financial services sector, I would have thought there is going to be far greater gender parity than the data is actually showing us. So would you like to again talk about, again, you spoke about your experience at ICICI, but what do you see banks doing today? And how are banks making it easier for, is there something you believe that banks and financial services and others need to do a little bit differently to ensure that at least they reach, at the very least, they reach the level where the IT business is today?
No, I certainly think I was also, when I saw the data, surprised because one has seen so many women bankers do exceedingly well. And frankly, banking or insurance or, any of the financial services, it's far easier.
Audit itself. And
Audit, yeah,
if I may, one of the things which, when I was discussing with Srinivasan yesterday, one of the things he said was, compared to a lot of other geographies, there are fewer women who are enrolling for the CFA program in India as a percentage of women, on a gender basis than in geographies like China and the US. So it's something which is kind of, it is something which kind of doesn't add up. So could it be the long hours which have become the norm in the financial services sector, or is it that we make it a little bit more difficult for women to work here? So just your take, and what is your bank doing to make it a more level playing field, if I may use that word?
Yeah. So I can talk from our own bank experience. So one of the things we are trying to do is, at the entry stage itself, have a good proportion of women so that we nurture them for middle management, and over time, over 10, 15 years, they can come to the top management positions. That is certainly something that we are doing. In fact, Standard Chartered Bank globally has signed up for the UK Finance Charter, which requires 30% workforce in senior leadership across the world to be occupied by women. So this is clearly something that is very much in the bank, a very dominant thought process. What we also do to help women, typically the problem comes when a woman sort of goes the family way. So we have creches in a lot of our bank branches. In fact, in Bandra Kurla itself, we have 5,000 square feet of a creche, and we have about 50 odd kids. So we have tried to, we also were the first bank which gave 6-month maternity leave. So we are trying to sort of make it very easy for a woman to sort of come back. The other thing we are focusing on is very often skill sets. Sometimes you need to unlearn and learn a lot. And we are trying to also organize that in our bank through women cohorts, where the women sort of get an option to move and do other function roles, or the trainings that they are given sort of in a way ensures that they stay relevant. So there are many, many things that we as a bank are focused on to ensure that we maintain the diversity. Having said that, even in our bank, in the senior management, it is clearly not there. We are not at 30% even today in India. And one of the things that is really a focus is that we identify the talent just below the top management, and we start grooming them for taking on more leadership roles. So this is the journey, but it's a journey. It's not an overnight fix.
Yeah, that is there. Srinivas, before I ask Zarin the next question, do you want to, are there some questions which are popping up on your screen?
Yeah, there are lots of questions. I'm not sure how much time we'll have, but Navneet Munot, all of us know that he's very passionate about this particular topic and also about ESG in general. So he's asking, we have got lots of senior members in our membership, they are women members. So what would be your advice, Zareen and Amit, to our senior women members to get opportunities of joining Indian boards?
So look, sorry, Zarin, and then I can tell you what fund managers globally have been doing.
Okay. No, to my mind, frankly, if a woman is competent, she really should aspire to take a board position, because the kind of experience that you get being on a board is a very nice bird's eye view of an organization, and there's a lot of learning being on the board. I myself was on the board, of course, as a nominee director from ICICI Bank on JSW Steel. And I feel the learning that I had in that period of 8-9 years that I was on the board was quite immense, because you start understanding manufacturing, you start understanding, many things that from a financial services viewpoint, you sometimes don't understand. I think the other thing as the CFA Institute, there are a lot of headhunting firms who sort of headhunt women directors. I think it would be good for CFA Institute or to sort of, feed those kinds of profiles and CVs to these headhunting firms of women who have shown interest in being in board positions. And there are a lot of trainings that are there today of if you get into a board position, there is a bit of training that also is imparted. So I would advise to go for that training also.
Yeah, I'll echo what Zarin is saying. So first is, the initial set of women who kind of joined the boards. There was a mentorship program which was set up under the aegis of FICCI. And they kind of identified women. They kind of brought in a mentor. They were trained for about 3 to 6 months. And it's not that they're attending classes every day, but just spending some 2-3 hours with the likes of Harsh Goenka or Harsh Mariwal or Deepak Parekh and some of the others. And, they kind of came and spoke to some of these people about what it is. They were also given a chance to attend a board meeting. And, there were a few lectures which were organized for these women, in terms of, different people had come in and spoken about different aspects of the women. But, one of the things, since, Navneet is at SBI, one of the things which, globally the funds have started doing is they've kind of, baked it into their voting guidelines. So what BlackRock does is they've kind of said that we want boards, and US has kind of had its own sets of challenges in getting in women directors on boards. So they said we want at least 2 women directors on the board of a company. And if there aren't 2 women directors, we will vote out any member of the remuneration committee as and when they come up for appointment. So I think collectively, if the mutual funds kind of push this cause and say that, look, we want more women directors and we want companies to take it more seriously, it will happen. And but just to come back, so we had BlackRock do that, we had Vanguard do something similar. Goldman Sachs said it will not underwrite the IPO of a company which did not have any women directors on the board. So maybe if we all kind of collectively have a movement and have a pledge and say that, look, we're going to sign the 30% pledge, and we give ourselves 3 years for 30%, and then all the various components, whether it is industry leaders like Zarin, or it is Navneet, who has an oversized influence in the fund management industry. It is bodies like the CFA Institute. If all of us, we also do bits and pieces where we can. If all of us kind of collectively decide and put this out as a target for corporate India, we know that FICCI as an industry association is committed to it, because we worked with them on this report in the past, and they've kind of continued to work on it. We could actually collectively put a program together to ensure that India too or Indian women too have fair representation on boards of companies?
This is fantastic. This is one of the action points that is emerging out of this discussion, Zarin and Amit. I'll quickly move on to the next question. Vidhu Shekhar, CFA Institute country head. Here's the stats for candidates which you just referred to, Amit. 30% of CFA candidates are women. 20% of those passing level 3 are women, and only 10% of our members are women. So, as a community of professionals, what can we do to improve these numbers?
Well, I don't know what the statistics is for the Institute of Chartered Accountants or whether it's different for them. If it is the same, then I think the problem could be just in terms of how the finance profession is viewed by a lot of the younger people. I kind of keep hearing, and this is a conversation which one of my senior colleagues, Hetal, keeps telling me. It's the long hours which are there in the banks and the financial services business, which kind of keep a lot of people from looking at looking at a career in finance. Now, will that still continue? Will work from home mean that we can be a little bit more, earlier you said that look, because of security reasons, because of the security protocol, a lot of work had to be done in office. Now, after the pandemic, we see that a lot of work can be done from home. And maybe that is where because of that, maybe the work hours change, maybe the mix between work from office and work from home changes, maybe the roles and responsibilities start changing. It's a bit early to say, but I think my own take on this is that the pandemic will have a very significant impact on the data, which we're going to see 3 to 5 years from now because of what has happened. I think gender roles themselves are getting redefined. Some of my male friends, and I hate it because it's a gender stereotype, they spend a lot of their time putting up photos of what they've cooked. I haven't seen, women have just taken it for granted that, look, there's no great deal, nothing to take a photograph and put it all over the place. But men do that all the time. So maybe things will.
Absolutely. So Amit, let me come to that point later.
I'd love to hear your take on this.
Yeah, exactly. Zarin's, what's Zarin's take on this? I mean, quick advice on how do we encourage. Amit made a point that people may be viewing finance as a profession where long hours are required. What are your insights? How can we encourage more people to stay in the long race? And that ties up with Amit's question as well. How can they stay in the race till they reach the board?
Sorry, I was on mute. No, my own experience is that you can do work-life balance if a woman really wants to. And I'll give my own example. So, you really need to have, as a woman, your ecosystem in place. And when I mean ecosystem, you need your mother or your mother-in-law or a good maid servants who really take care of your household. And the second thing is about work-life balance. So I'll give my one example. I used to actually celebrate my kids' birthdays on weekends because I didn't want a situation where something comes up on office front and I'm not giving the right time for my kids for their birthday party or whatever. So women have to find ways of dealing with both these things. Long hours, maybe they're in other industries, and if you can work partly from home, if you can always walk out at 5:30 and then work 1 hour in the evening after reaching home, after having attended to your personal whatever. So my personal view is, in fact, financial services enables you to work from home. It's not that most of the jobs, actually, you can work partly from home. Our bank today is 90 to 95% working from home. And the second thing is, I think very important for women is self-belief. Very often, I find that women don't put up their hand for a role when it comes up. So in our own bank, we have something called Job Watch. So whenever a role comes up, it's Job Watch, which means anybody can apply for that role. Very often I find, it's only men who apply. Women don't even put up their hand because they always worry, oh, will I be able to manage? So sometimes the problem is not the organizations. Sometimes it's the women who themselves need to believe they can do it. And my own experience is if you believe you can do it, you can do it. You really need a very supporting, husband or spouse, which is very important in all this, but you can do it.
Those are excellent points and insights, Zarin and Amit. So I just wanted to very quickly. We've got only. I'm cognizant of the time. 5 minutes. A question that has raised a quick answer, if I may, Amit. Is the wage gap issue truly present today in India? This from an anonymous attendee. Is the wage gap issue present in India? If you have any numbers, maybe.
I need to pull it out, but if you bear with me, but we did find that for the same job, at least at the board level, and this data is not for 19, but maybe for up to December 18 or whatever. But we did find that there's a significant there is a gap between men and women for the same role.
Right.
I mean, maybe Zarin could speak, and I'll kind of try and pull out that data in a quick minute.
Favoring the males, right? The
Sorry?
gap is favoring the males.
But look, let me say that if I mean, I don't have it at the top, but I think what we did see was a 25-30% wage gap at the board level.
Okay. Zarin, what are your thoughts? I mean, what are you seeing in terms of the wage gap in India in between the two genders?
So I, of course, I'm only privy to the two organizations that I worked in, but I didn't see any wage gap between men and women in the two organizations that I worked in.
Right. No, that's very heartening actually to me at least, and for everyone watching this, that you did not see any wage gap. Manish Jain from Hyderabad, he's asking, what is the bigger issue, Amit? I guess he's asking it to Amit. Women in board or quality of directors on boards, irrespective of gender?
Look, both are issues. So I would say that, look, at the end of the, let me kind of put it slightly differently. All these years we've had men on boards, and clearly the boards have let down the investors. So maybe the opportunity is now to have more women on board. And a better gender mix, and maybe even more women on board. Maybe they'll do a better job than the men have done as far as providing returns to investors are concerned. So if you look at it, the whole entire insolvency, the fact that you've got so many companies, so many bankrupt companies, the fact that you've got, a huge NPL mess in the country today could well be because, the boards have not to a large extent because the boards have not been there asking difficult questions. And who's been on boards? It's been men. So I don't think it's an either or. I think the solution could be on having more women on board.
Right. Sorry, I'm trying to squeeze in questions. I'm sorry, Amit. So Siva, my colleague from CFA Institute, he's asking if there are diversity requirements these days on women candidates in the interview pool, and if not the final selection. Is it a modest task? Is that something nomination committees do when looking for director candidates? Can do nomination? Is that a trend here? Is that a requirement?
It's not a requirement, but at the end of the day, once you've most of the boards, what we find is that once you've begun with one, there's a hesitation to bring in the first woman. After that, the path becomes a little bit easier. Just like for a woman, once she's on one board, it becomes a little bit easier to move to the second or the third.
Right.
But there's no requirement. But Zarin, can you talk about it in terms of when you kind of are looking at candidates? I think what we should do is break up the problem. One is at the board level and one is below the board, which is just the level outside the board, which is also equally important.
Looking at candidates, we definitely ask for diversity to be there in the interviewee pool. That's for sure. We try and do that. Having said that, it's not easy to get a lot of senior female profiles when we are laterally hiring from outside. So that is the struggle actually for us. But having said that, we try and ensure that there is diversity in the pool of candidates that we look at.
I wanted to ask, two or three things, before leaving the call, Zarin and Amit. I have at least one action point, and I'll go through my notes, which is a very solid action points on how we can promote members from our own community to boards. But any other 2-3 action points, Zarin and Amit, each one of you, of what women can do and what others can do to make sure that there is enough diversity, especially of women, in every place, right from the junior level to the boards.
So I can talk of my own experience. So one of the reasons ICSA has such a high diversity at the top has been because Mr. Kamath and Mr. Vagul, when those days we used to recruit from the IIMs or IITs or wherever, we used to ensure diversity at the starting point. The second thing is, after having brought in the women, the thing is, how do you nurture talent and how do you ensure that the woman stays? And there I would put my own example. Mr. Kamath, actually, when he gave a job, it wouldn't bother him if he was giving to a woman or to a male. And I was told, for example, to run the rural and agri business of the bank. And that entailed traveling the length and breadth of the country. But Mr. Kamath gave it to me, and I really don't know why he chose me. But it didn't matter in ICSA when a job was being given, whether it's being given to a male or female. And that's the kind of challenge that was thrown at you, and that ensured that you stayed engaged and you felt you were growing or climbing the ladder in the bank.
There's nothing to add except that the Bloomberg conversation I mentioned. There needs to be a little bit more awareness and where you can. So if if the CFA Institute in all its panels ensures that at least there's more gender, at least one, if not more, of the panelists are women, it's a small step. But Zarin, as Zarin says, that look, at the entry level, then at the next level and third level. So in a sense, it's kind of, put the other way, it's kind of like unpeeling the onion. So at each level, you have to ensure that there is sufficient gender diversity.
Right. Okay. So, I think we have run out of time, Amit and Zarin. This has been extremely informative and a very insightful session for all of us. We are going to shortly put it on YouTube. We are going to request the CFA Society India board to put it on YouTube, and I'm sure people will take, there'll be lots of learning from this session as well. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much for the attendees to come in these numbers on a Friday evening. Instead of going, you can't go out, but instead of doing other things in the house, you're coming and attending this. That's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.